Let me ask you something. When was the last time you made a decision that had nothing to do with what someone else would think? Not your parents, not your friends, not strangers on the internet, just you. Take a moment. Think about it. Most people can't answer that question easily, and it's not because they're weak or fake. It's because from the very first day of our lives, we were taught to look outward. Did they smile? Did they approve? Did they notice? We learn to read the room before we learn to read ourselves. There's a version of you that exists only in other people's heads. The you that shows up on social media. The you at family dinners. The you at work. And somewhere along the way, a lot of us started building our lives around that version, choosing careers that look impressive, staying in relationships that look healthy, buying things that signal the right kind of success. Not because it feels right, because it looks right. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote something that stayed with me. He said, "Hell is other people." A lot of people think that's a cynical line. It's not. What he meant was this. The moment another person looks at you, they freeze you into an image. They decide who you are. And the terrifying thing is, you start to believe them. You become the image they see. You live inside their version of you, and slowly, without noticing, you stop asking what you actually want. Sociologist Erving Goffman spent his life studying this. He said, "We are all performers. Every room we walk into is a stage. Every conversation is a performance. We adjust our posture, our words, our opinions, based on who's watching. And again, that's not dishonesty. That's human nature. The problem is when the performance never stops. When you go home and you're still performing. When you're alone and you're still imagining an audience. When you can no longer tell the difference between what you want and what you want people to think you want. Psychologist Erich Fromm called this the marketing character. A person who experiences themselves as a product, always asking, how do I come across? Am I desirable? Am I relevant? Am I enough? Sound familiar? We live in a world that is perfectly designed to keep you in that state. Every like, every view, every comment is a small dose of someone else's approval. And the more you get, the more you need. So what do you actually want? Not what looks good. Not what makes sense to explain. Not what your parents hoped for. Not what your peers are doing. What do you want? Most people haven't sat with that question long enough to get an honest answer. Because the honest answer is sometimes inconvenient. Sometimes it doesn't fit the image. Sometimes it's quieter and smaller and less impressive than the life you've been performing. There's a concept in Buddhism called the second arrow. The first arrow is pain. Something happens, it hurts. The second arrow is what you do to yourself after. The shame, the comparison, the performance of being okay. Most of our suffering isn't the first arrow. It's the second one. The one we fire ourselves for an audience that isn't even watching. Here's what I think. You will never fully escape the gaze of others. You're a social creature. You need people. That's not a flaw. But there's a difference between being shaped by relationships and being imprisoned by them. The people who seem most free, most alive, are not the ones who stopped caring about others. They're the ones who stopped performing for strangers and started showing up honestly for the people who actually matter. Think about the last choice you made to impress someone who will probably forget about it by next week. Now think about the thing you've been putting off because you're not sure how it would look. Maybe those two things are connected. You don't owe anyone a performance. You owe yourself a life. See you next time.